Hello and welcome to The Melting Pot. I'm your host, Dominic Monkhouse. The Melting Pot is a result of my hunger for optimizing business performance. Scaling up organizations, corporate culture, customer addiction, building high-performing teams, along with a few other obsessions. I've spent the last several years working for and with some of the most successful top-performing companies in the world. And this podcast is my attempt to synthesize what I've learned along the way, to help you build a higher quality business and live a more fulfilling life. If you enjoy the podcast, you can find more information on today's episode. We do cracking show notes. They're at dominicmonkhouse.com. Hello and welcome to The Melting Pot. I'm Dominic Monkhouse and today I'm talking to Nigel Bennett. Nigel is an entrepreneur, but unlike many entrepreneurs, he decided not to sell his business. He decided to keep it and use it as a platform for good. He set up a couple of charities, one with his kids. We talk about that. He also set some life goals with his business coach, Kevin Lawrence, who's previous guest on the show. And one of them was to take a year off with his family. And so he talks about how he set the business up, and we talk a little bit about his year off. And he's written a book about his entrepreneurial journey and his year off called Take the Leap, Risking It All for What Really Matters. And I think it's finding what really matters to him, and that's using his business as a platform for good. We talk about some of the accidents along the way, like being dragged to an EO meeting. And we talk about how he had an epiphany in the jungle in the Amazon. Absolutely fantastic conversation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Nigel Bennett. I'm founder of Aqua-Guard Spill Response. What my company does is we design and manufacture state-of-the-art oil spill response equipment for the marine environment. And we've been involved in pretty much every major marine oil spill on the planet since the Exxon Valdez, which was in 1989.
How do you end up in such a niche?
I actually worked for my father's environmental mapping company for 10 years, right out of high school. I was, so my first gig with him was down in Venezuela. So the day after my graduation from high school, I was 18 years old. I had a bit of a hangover from the big party the night before. And I was in a plane headed south to Venezuela, where I was flying in helicopters and fixed wing aircraft. And I was taking photographs of the coastline, mapping for sensitivities for oil spills. The first couple of days I was down there, we were getting shot at by FARC guerrillas, the guerrillas that are between the Colombian and Venezuelan border. They're actually still active today. They're still blowing up pipelines. So that was a rude awakening. And so that took me to probably 10 or 11 countries in 10 years where I was doing this. I was in Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, Venezuela, and I had a long stint in Egypt for about 5 years on and off. And the one thing that I really noticed in Egypt is I did a helicopter flight over the Sinai Peninsula with a ex-American Vietnam pilot, and his name was Johnny. And he was a big fella. And he took me up over the Sinai, and he showed me some of this horrific environmental degradation. There was pipeline after pipeline after pipeline that had been ruptured, and oil was flowing into the Red Sea, literally in rivers. And I was just like, oh my God, like what is going on here? And I saw the same thing in Venezuela on Lake Maracaibo, where I was over Lake Maracaibo. And he said to me, I know you're doing this environmental mapping thing and all that. And, I know you're taking this data back and I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I really don't think you're going to make a difference. Look at it out here. Nobody cares. It's people in Cairo, 300-400 miles away. They can barely feed themselves. Why do they care about what's happening in the Red Sea? Why do the Venezuelans care what's happening in Lake Maracaibo? And he said, I really don't think you can make a difference. So at that point in time, I was like, in my early 20s at this point, and I'm like, damn it, I can make a difference. What are you talking about? So my father was thrown in prison in Egypt, and I actually had to escape the country during this period. There's a whole story. I write about this in my book. But I got back to Vancouver in Canada where I live, and I actually broke off of my father's company. And I formed Aqua-Guard Spill Response. So we were designing and manufacturing equipment for these clients in these countries that I had got to know over 10 years that needed help. They didn't have anybody providing this equipment or technology. So I went to the British Columbia Institute of Technology, and I grabbed another guy that was working for my father's company, and we left along with my sister, and we formed this little company, Aqua-Guard. And we started providing this equipment all over the planet. And now we're in about 104 countries. Actually added up to 104, probably a couple more than that now. But we don't have offices there in all these countries, but we've done business in all these different countries. And we provided a lot of equipment for the BP Horizon oil spill disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. That's where I am now with my business. Yeah, that's kind of who I am.
So you created an entirely new category, oil spill response. Are you the biggest company in your category?
No. We have competitors in the UK. We have competitors in Denmark and, a couple of in the US. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I really enjoy it. And, I've been doing it for almost 30 years now, if you include the mapping.
But when you talk about it, it sounds like it's very rewarding.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's really rewarding. And, it's really rewarding, and I've had a lot of fun doing it as well. I mean, we've had our ups and downs like any business. It got to a point where we were growing so fast, and I really didn't know where to turn. I was actually dragged into a group called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, which was YEO, which is now called the Entrepreneurs Organization, by a friend of mine, which was a 300-pound lineman from a Canadian football team. He just retired from professional football. And he literally grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and he said, "You need help, man. Like, you need to join this organization called the Entrepreneurs Organization." I'm like, "There's no way I have time for that. I have a young family and I've got a business." And he literally grabbed me and took me to a meeting, and I became a member. And that was probably one of the best things I ever did, was join this peer group, which is, for me, it was the Entrepreneurs Organization. There's also YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization. There's chapters in every city in the world. And my wife and I talk about it all the time. And that was probably one of the biggest or the best decisions we ever made, was joining.
Letting somebody persuade you that this was a good idea.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
But how long was your dad in prison for in Egypt?
I knew you were going to get
you can't just leave a storyline there. And
I'd been working in Egypt on and off for 5 years, and that was in the mid 80s. And we were mapping the country, and I was flying in helicopters and looking at broken pipelines everywhere. And then our contract had come to an end, and we had an apartment in Alexandria, and I was going to meet him in Cairo, and the project was done. And I had a phone call, and, "Your father's missing." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I ended up driving we had a taxi driver, which was our guy. We just hired the same taxi for years. And I drove this old broken down road, around camels and broken down trucks in the middle of the night, and got to this hotel and found that my father had, been missing. This guy grabbed me, pulled me into a room. I sat on the floor in this room for, 7 hours in the dark. And there was a phone call on the desk across the room, and it was him calling from prison. And he gave me a code, and he said, "Take the next bus and stay with Mike." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" So we hung up the phone. He hung up, and then I sat back on the floor with this other guy, which was actually one of our people. And I couldn't figure it out. And he goes, No, I know what it means. It means take the next flight, because I was supposed to fly with my father to London to go to my cousin's wedding in London. So he said, "No, it means take the next flight to London and stay with Mike, my cousin." So I basically snuck out the back door, and I was out. And I was in London, and I was trying to get him out of jail. And he was there probably for 6 months in horrific conditions. And they finally released him. I was back in Canada working with our MPs in Canada to try and get him released. But the unfortunate thing is that I have to say, I guess, that my father and my ethics clashed. So I basically left and formed my own business, because I didn't want to ever be in that situation ever again. It was really, really tough.
And so all of that is in the book. What's the book called?
It's all in the book. It's all in the book. The book is called "Take That Leap, Risking It All for What Really Matters." So what really matters in life.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on Amazon. I actually just finished the Audible version in August, so it's available on Audible, so audiobook and paperback and on Kindle and all that stuff. So it's doing way better than I've ever dreamed. I'm really just over the moon with the results of it. Yeah, and I give all the proceeds that I bring in. That's everything. I give everything to local charities or local and international charities that our family support. Yeah, so like Covenant House here in Vancouver, probably in the UK too. I don't know, where they work with at-risk youth, they're street kids, and various different charities. So everything that I make, from speaking engagements to my book, all go to, there's a list of charities on my website there that we donate everything to.
And so, what's the book about then? What's risking it all, and what really matters?
I wanted to write a book. And I was encouraged to write a book about, my life's journey, my entrepreneurial journey, and life journey, because that's what it is. It's not just the business, it's the life. And there's so many books that are written on how to do this and tell you how to do things. I wanted to share experiences and have people, the reader, take whatever nuggets they can. And if they want to apply them to their business or their life, they can. If not, so... Yeah, so that's what it is. So there's a lot of adventure in it, a lot of international business, people getting thrown in jails and getting shot at in helicopters and things like that in different parts of the world, all the way down to, what really gave me a big shake to get my act together, which was, one of the things was getting a coach. So I was dragged into the Entrepreneurs Organization with this massive 300-pound football player. And after a couple of years, fairly soon, I was encouraged to get a coach. I had a business coach because we were doing some transitions inside our business. But I was meeting with the business coach the whole time, and for breakfast, and he said, no, Nigel, you need this other coach. And his name is Kevin Lawrence, and he's been on your show. He's a great guy. So I've been with Kevin for 15 years. And that was the second best decision I ever made. The first thing was joining his peer group, which is the Entrepreneurs Organization, and the second was hiring on Kevin to really hold me accountable for what I wanted to do, not for what everybody else wanted to do, but for what I wanted to do in my life and my business and how to mold my business. So,
where are you at with your business? I mean, how long did it take to write the book? Did you take time out to write that?
Yeah, well, I'm dyslexic and I have ADD, so it took me 3 years. And I wanted to write my own book. I didn't want somebody to write it for me. You can pay people to write books, but I said, no, I'm writing the whole thing. And I had a fantastic editor that I was working with, Shay Hayden, and she helps CEOs write their books of their lives. So that's what she does. That's her thing. And it took me 3 years. Oh, so many stories that I was approached 2010. I was approached in 2010 to sell my business to a UK competitor, actually, at the Isle of Wight, just out off Southampton or in Portsmouth. I had agreed that I didn't want to sell it, so I flew to New York to meet these guys, and they said that I thought they wanted a strategic alliance, but they came in and said, no, we want to buy your company, and I'm like, well, we're not for sale. So I came back to Vancouver with my business partner. And then they kept coming after us, and they said, okay, we really want you guys. And so we agreed to sell the business. The deal was pretty much done. They'd paid a deposit. And I met a lady in my class in Boston. I go to this class called the Gathering of Titans in Boston at MIT, and it's a spinoff of the Entrepreneurs Organization. And one of the speakers came in. I was pretty much done at the time. I was like, I don't know what to do with my life and my business, and she actually invited. This is another story. She invited our class to go deep into the Amazon rainforest with her, because she works with the indigenous tribes of the Amazon to help preserve their way of life, called the Ashwar. And I thought that was fascinating. I thought, you're kidding me. We can go and visit. And she goes, yes, we're the only group on the planet that's working together with these people. They came to us, said, hey, we need help from the outside world. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to go. So I took my family, and I told this lady, and her name was Lynn Twist, and she wrote an amazing book called The Soul of Money. She's been on Oprah Winfrey and many, but she's an amazing woman and an amazing speaker, Lynn Twist. And so she took myself, and I said to her, Lynn, I'd like to bring my kids and my family. And she goes, no, it's a CEO fundraising thing to bring awareness to this tribe. And I said, Lynn, you have to understand that the youth, I have this much bandwidth in my working days and my life. I've got this much. My kids have this much. And they have social media and they have, so I said, they need to come and they need to see this, what's going on there. So she agreed. So we went deep into the Amazon, flew in, and our whole family of 5 were in a tiny little Cessna, all crammed in with our bags. We all had to get weighed. Flew for about an hour and a half over nothing but untouched jungle. No human touch except for this tribe. We landed on a dirt runway, which was lined with yellow flowers and as markers. And then we got in canoes, and then we went and we spent time in a village with Yashwar, and we did ceremony. And I had no idea what we were going to do. So we did a ceremony. We did what's called ayahuasca, which is a mind altering serum that they've been doing for millennia. And I had this crazy vision. People talk about going to the Amazon and having visions. Well, I actually did. And I think what happens is that the ayahuasca got deep inside my conscience or my subconscious. And because I was toiling with selling the business or not selling the business. I wasn't quite sure, did I do the right thing? Did I sell the business for the right reason? And the deal was done, but it wasn't done. And I saw this face of this kind of this indigenous person kind of looking at me with this look of great responsibility. And it scared the crap out of me. And I was like, oh my God. And it just had this really nice smile at first. And then it was this serious look of responsibility. And then it went back to this beautiful smile and all that. And then I went off on my journey for another few hours and woke up in a palapa. But what it was trying to tell me was, Nigel, this is what I believe, it was my subconscious talking to me. It activated something in my subconscious. And it was basically saying, don't sell your business, Nigel. Keep your business. Use the platform that you formed for 30 years to do good in the world, whatever good is, whatever your good is. But don't sell it. Don't cash out. I mean, don't cash your business out and go sell t-shirts on the beach. You've got so much more that you can do with it. And so that's what I did is I flew back home. I flew to London. I pulled the deal off the table. And then I ended up buying out my business partner and then bringing up a younger guy that had been with us for years and years and years. And basically he runs the whole organization for me. And now I'm at 30,000 feet and I kind of hover in and hover out. And I actually, and then I took a year off. And I traveled with my family around the world. We went to 17 countries and off the beaten path, just backpacks. And we had 3 t-shirts, 1 pair of shorts, flip-flops. So in every photograph in every country, we're wearing 1 of 3 t-shirts. That's it.
And how old were your kids when you did that?
My middle son was 18. He just graduated from high school. My daughter was should have been the ninth grade. So we homeschooled her for a year. And our oldest son was in university, so he flew in and flew out. He met us in Indonesia, then he met us in Argentina. It was the most incredible experience of my life, and I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. And people go, how did you do it? I said, anybody can do it. Living overseas is a lot cheaper than living in London or in Vancouver, believe me. So it's possible, but we put up these walls, and it's all in our head. We just say we can't do it. And actually Kevin Lawrence, my coach, it was the very last thing. I've been working with Kevin for quite a few years, and we've been able to set the business up to run without me, moved out some other CEOs that we brought in and got rid of them quicker than And the last thing on my list was take off for a year and travel with the family. I'm like, no, Kevin, that's not possible. People don't do that. He goes, what's on your list? That's the one thing that you really, really, really wanted. And I'm like, I know, but come on. And so my wife was in the kitchen. I was on the phone with Kevin, and he goes, does Reiko, my wife's Japanese, and it's Reiko, he said, does Reiko still want to do it? And I'm like, I don't know. He says, ask her. So I yell, hey, Reiko, do you still want to take off for a year and travel? She says, yeah, of course. And Kevin's like, aha, okay. So let's work with this. So it took us a few months, but I didn't plan anything. We left and we just went as the wind took us. And it was absolutely the most incredible thing for myself and my kids. And my wife and I had always wanted, our main goal was to raise global citizens as our kids. And
I think also lovely because I think the stat is when your kids finish high school and go to college or university, at that point you've spent 95% of the time with them that you'll ever spend with them, and you got to do more of that great stuff.
Well, I don't know if you ever had Jim Shills on your show. He has a thing called 18 Summers, and he basically says you have 18 summers with your kids, and you better spend time with them in their earlier life, because what I found now, my kids are now, my oldest is 25, Devin, our middle one, is 23. He's our actor. He actually went to acting school in London while we were there during our trip. That's what he wanted to do. And I'm like, cool, man, go for it. And our daughter's 19. But what we're finding now is that they're all off doing their thing and we don't have as much time with them. So Jim Shills is right. There's that 18 summers that we have with our kids. And, it's a very special time. And with entrepreneurs, what I find with entrepreneurs in all of I've been involved in all these. So I was in the Entrepreneurs Organization for 15 or 17 years. And I was in another group called Tiger 21 for 3 or 4 years. This Gathering of Titans group, and so many different groups. But I find that, I don't want to say, but I think it's a very, very, very high percentage of my classmates and all these different organizations that I've been in have had disastrous relationships with their families and divorce, multiple divorces. And I talk with them all the time, and they say, man, the one thing, if I could have it back, I would want to spend more time with my family. The one thing that I've learned is that I would always, it was really hard, but if in a business crisis, I would still do, like during the BP Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, probably the biggest project that we'd ever had, I had already booked this trip to the Amazon. And I went to the Amazon, right? I was gone for 2 weeks. I knew that people would step up. When I left, I knew my number 2 was going to step up. And they always do. But it's our ego. We can't let go of our ego. We're indispensable. That's BS. So, my thing is never sacrifice family for a business crisis, because we're always in crisis. Every day's a crisis in business. I lived for years, and I call it the doorknob effect. When I arrive at my office, I would put my hand out, I would take a deep breath, I would touch the doorknob, and I would turn it, knowing that as soon as I stepped in, it was going to be a complete bee's nest and chaos. Everybody wanted me every single day for 20 plus years. If we can set ourselves up to, get into that rhythm or that life rhythm, I know Kevin, we talked about it for years, Kevin Lawrence. We call it a life rhythm, not a life balance, because you're sacrificing one for the other with balance. A life rhythm is a flow. You get into the flow. And being able to do your business, which is great, but spend time doing what you love and with your family is the most incredible thing. And to take it up a notch higher, giving back or giving as a family is more powerful than anything. I find that, giving a check once a year for your conscience, that's great because you're helping out organizations. But to actually volunteer at an old folks home or a soup kitchen or building houses in Mexico for the homeless or whatever it is great, physically doing it. But taking your family and getting your kids involved, I don't think there's anything more powerful than that.
Well, and you were telling me before we started recording, you actually set up a charity with your kids on the back of your Round the World.
Yeah. We set up a group that's called True Beach, which is TRUBEACH. So True Beach, what it is we were very fortunate, and we're water people. So my company's Aqua-Guard, protecting water. The world's most precious resource is water. So we're surfers and scuba divers and things like that. So we were diving and surfing all over the world. It was like the Endless Summer film. That's what I wanted to do. I want to do the Endless Summer.
You only had flip-flops, so you had to keep going to warm places.
That's right. But we did end up in Bhutan in the Himalayas with flip-flops, and the guides that came to pick us up go, "What are you guys doing? We're going on a trek. You got flip-flops." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Is there like a secondhand climbing store we can buy?" And we ended up buying a bunch of gear in a secondhand climbing shop in Bhutan. But I got so fed up. I watched all these old surf movies. I've watched Endless Summer and Endless Summer 2 and Step into Liquid, these classic surf films of all these beautiful surf spots. And we ended up going to a lot of them. But when it would rain, the oceans would become full of plastic and garbage. And I'd be paddling into a wave and my skegs would be caught and my son and daughter would be beside me. We couldn't catch a wave because of all the trash. So I got so fed up. It was the same thing. It was in Indonesia. It was in Brazil. So many places were like that. So we started this thing called True Beach. So you can report on the true conditions of our beaches and oceans around the world to bring awareness and hopefully change in governments and organizations and hotel organizations. And I have alliances with groups like Surfrider Foundation, the Ocean Legacy, and various groups like that we work with. And it's an app. It's an app. If you go on vacation and you go to a beach, you just download True Beach on your iPhone and you take a picture and do a review and just help spread awareness and hopefully change. So yeah, that's one of the things we do.
Because the hoteliers will be compelled to fix it if it's impacting their pocket.
Exactly. It all comes down to affecting their pocket. And if one beach gets a 5-star rating because their beach is cleaner than the next, well, people are going to go to the 5-star and pay more. So the other guys are going to want to keep their beaches clean. And they're going to want to work with the governments to educate the people not to throw the garbage into the dry riverbeds. So when it rains, everything gets flushed out into the ocean.
Ah, okay. That's what that is. Right. I see.
That's what happens. Yeah.
Wow. So Bhutan, was that, if you look back, was that your favorite place? What were your top?
You were going to ask that.
What were your top 3?
It's really hard because, as you know, Don, like you travel it, and it's the place is a background. The people are what make places. And I just found every place we went to 17 different countries.
Go on. Where did you go? What was you?
Well, we started in Europe. We started in Europe to ease it in. So we started in southern France with my cousin from London, and we were down there hanging out, which is amazing. And then we were in London for 6 weeks. So I had a little bit of business, and I have family in London, which was wonderful. I love London. And then we headed to Sevilla in Spain for a month and a half. And then we ended up going up to Madrid. And then so we eased it in Europe. And then we headed over to the Middle East. We were in Dubai for a while. And then we were in Indonesia, in Bali, and then Lambanggang and all over Indonesia. And then we were in Malaysia, which I'd done business before. And it was fabulous. And then we were in Myanmar, Burma. Absolutely unbelievable. One of my favorite places on the planet. It's like, remember the old Indiana Jones movies? It's like living in an Indiana Jones movie. It's just raw. Everything was raw, and the people are wonderful. It's, a bit difficult with the government, but it was fantastic. The food was amazing. Then we were in northern Thailand, and then Bhutan. A friend of mine from my class in Boston again founded the first international heritage festival or something of Bhutan. So we went there, and then we spent a few weeks going all over Bhutan with some of his friends. And then we were in Japan because my wife's from Japan, tiny village in Japan, all over Japan, New York, and then down through, where did we go? Then we were in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Búzios, all over Brazil. And then Argentina, which was fabulous, up in the mountains. We wanted to do a bit of trekking, so we were up in the mountains in Mendoza and the wineries. Where did we go from? Then we were in Colombia, Cartagena, which was great, and south of Cartagena. And then Cuba, we were there for about a month in Cuba. I have people we work in Cuba. So I had I did a little bit of work there, and then it was just amazing place. And then through Mexico City, and then back to Vancouver. So we were gone for a year. It was just a dream. You know, the one thing that my wife and I agree that we really enjoyed the most was we would get up in the morning and we would go down to a coffee shop. Say we're in Italy or Spain or so, we'd go down to a coffee shop and we would sit for maybe 3 hours and just chat and watch people go by. Nothing gets better than that. We had no agenda, and we'd watch the old gentlemen that would come in early in the morning, and they would sit and they would meet with the older gentlemen, mostly older gentlemen. And they would be there 2 hours chatting with their buddies, and then they would slowly get up and leave. Just that calmness, and it was absolutely wonderful.
So you've got somebody running the business. You've been round the world for a year with your kids. You've written a book. You don't need to sell the business, so you've probably got no plans to retire anytime soon.
No.
But you must be planning another thing.
I just recorded my book, and then people are poking me to write another one. And I'm like, oh, come on. I'm like, come on. And they're like, no, sir, you have to write another one. I told my wife that the other day, and she's like, "You're kidding." And I'm like, "Well, no, I've been poked." So we also formed another group called giftadd.com, which is with Kevin Lawrence, my coach, which you've interviewed, and then Sue Hollis, who also you've interviewed. She's Aussie, and yeah, what it is everybody's got ADD. I'm dyslexic and ADD. I have ADD. So what giftadd.com is that it's a group or an organization that dispels the myth that dyslexia and ADD is a curse, but it's actually a gift. And that's what we want to show the world. And if you talk to Kevin, if you talk to Sue, if you talk to any of the people in all of these groups that I belong to, and your listeners are entrepreneurs, high percentage of entrepreneurs have ADD or dyslexic. But we actually have a gift because we're able to see things that other people don't see. We just don't realize it. So what our organization, giftadd.com, is really helping the kids. The hardest time in our lives is when we're in high school. When we're 16 and we're having a hard time in school and we don't know why. We think we're dumb. I got kicked out of the British Columbia Institute of Technology after the first term. And I begged the dean to let me back in, but he said, "Yeah, you can come back in if you take all the day classes you failed and all at night school and a full day load." And I'm like, "Sign me up." I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. But the beauty of that is what entrepreneurs do is we surround ourselves with really good people. And the only way I got out of the British Columbia Institute of Technology is because I had a lot of friends help me get through. And the same thing with my business. I've been able to have really, really good people around me. And now I've got this amazing fellow that's been working with us since he was 18 years old, hands-on guy, but he knows everything about my business. And he's 40 and he's running everything. And it gives me, and when I had a partner and we ended up buying him out, and the agreement is that I have a one-page plan with this new partner. I said, this is what I will do now, and this is what I won't do now. That was 8 years ago. We signed just a one-pager, and that's been like that ever since. So I only do what I love to do.
Fantastic. Which is all enabled by the fact you didn't sell your business.
Exactly.
So if you could go back in time, knowing one thing that you know now, is there somewhere you'd go? Is there some piece of knowledge you'd take back with you in time?
Yeah, I would have started a lot earlier, because this is probably when I was in my 40s. I think that, I joined the Entrepreneurs Organization just before I was probably 40. I was probably 38 or something. So I would have joined an organization like that much earlier, and I would have got a coach a lot earlier. The coaching thing for me is key. And, people ask me, well, yeah, you got a coach, but it's expensive. I'm like, well, it can be, but you pay for what you get. Don't buy a cheap coach. That's one thing. I'd rather pay more. I know Kevin, the first meeting I had, he said, it was, write me a check for whatever it was. It was a lot at that time for me. And I wrote it. He says, if after the first day you're not happy, you can just tear it up. So 15 years later, I'm still working with him. We're now on quarterlies. We used to meet monthly face-to-face, and then we would have a call once a month. And then now I'm on quarterlies.
Does he coach the guy who runs the business as well, or just you still?
He has done sessions with our executive team. Yeah.
And what other than your own book, which is Take the Leap?
Take that leap, risking it all for what really matters. That's the really matters part is the thing.
Other than that, what other books would you recommend, or have touched you along the way?
Man, I know way back, the Entrepreneur's Bible was pretty much the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is now E-Myth Revisited, which was, setting your business up and the systems and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Although he sets it up to sell, where I'm like, set it up to run without you so you can step out, don't sell it. I'm kind of more on the don't sell. Good to Great would be Jim Collins. That was really, really good. The hedgehog. Get the right people on the bus, get the right people in the right seats on the bus, and get the right guy driving the bus. Even that little piece there has just been so powerful to me. And then Kevin's book, Your Oxygen Mask First, Kevin Lawrence, it's a new one, just came out. And I guess Vern's book, Scaling Up, Vern Harnish. Vern's been great. I mean, Vern has been a mentor to all of us at our programs at MIT for years and years and years. And have a lot of respect for Vern over the years. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today and hear about your story and get some hints and tips for the people who listen to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dom. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. As a token of your appreciation, it'd be fantastic if you could go wherever you're listening and leave me a review. Those reviews really help other people find this podcast. For all information relating to this episode, you can go to dominicmonkhouse.com/podcast, and there you'll find some fantastic show notes, additional reading and links relating to this episode. You can also find my blog and the past editions of my subjectively not crap newsletter. The simplest thing to do on the website is to sign up, and I'll update you each week on the most interesting articles that I've read on all things relating to scaling up high-performing teams, net promoter score, company culture, etc. For social, you can find me on Twitter at Dom Monkhouse and LinkedIn at Dominic Monkhouse, although LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me. Share your questions and comments, and perhaps even recommend a guest for a future edition of the Melting Pot podcast. Thanks for listening.